So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second Voyage Efficiency for CII Compliance webinar. This is the second day, of course, and with me today are guests from StormGeo, BOGERD Martin, Hoppe Marine, Nautilus Labs, TMA Bulk, and of course, to start off, we'd like to thank BS Group for organizing all this and our sponsors for the day, which are StormGeo, BOGERD Martin, Hoppe Marine, and Nautilus Labs. So my name is Frank Paleokrassas. I'm the moderator, and I'll start off with my own presentation. So just can everyone see my screen now?
Yep.
Great. All right, so my name is Frank Paleokrassas. My background is naval architecture and marine engineering, and I've been with the Schulte Group for the last 13 years. So today we're going to talk about decarbonization, and of course the topic, the hot topic of discussion, and hence the overall topic of the webinar session here is CII and its implementation. So yesterday we had a couple of speakers from owners operators. Today is a little bit different. While we are as well owners, I'll be speaking on behalf of our ship management arm. And with us today is also Varun from TMA Bulk, who are a commercial operator, and therefore we'll see a different angle on the whole story. So a little bit about the Schulte Group. We are a 140-year-old family-owned company with three main verticals. Ship owning, the part that I started in actually, as an owner of 90 ships. The second vertical, ship management, the part that I belong to now, and I speak on behalf of, with BSM primarily, the biggest ship management company, and under its umbrella, of course, Pronav, LNG ship manager, and BSM Cruises. And our maritime services, here we only show a few, it's more than 15 in total, but critical ones for related to the topics that we'll discuss today, of course, here, our Schulte Marine Concept, our new building supervision arm, and MariApps, our software solutions provider. A little bit about our fleet. Overall, BSM manages a fleet of approximately 600 ships, 450 of which under full management. So, and as you can see here, the fleet is varied through more or less all commercial types, including passenger ships. So for us, the whole topic of performance has been a hot one. And we started off quite early on the whole subject back in 2016, actually. So overall, we had to develop a platform that would allow us to monitor all of this varied fleet at one time. But more specifically, coming to the decarbonization aspect, and of course to the CII, and I'm showing you this graph, of course you're tired of seeing the last few days. The whole topic, of course, is CII. But for us, CII is not a step change. It's really an operational matter for the reasons that we'll discuss a little bit later. But our leadership for 2022 decided to be quite aggressive on the CII aspect, and so we decided to start monitoring a year early. And as such, we set 3 targets. All vessels that had an E rating in 2021 to achieve a D rating in 2022. Likewise, all the ships with D rating to achieve C, and the rest to maintain the rating and achieve at least a 1% reduction. So This is overall how we were doing in 2021. As you can see, pretty standardly distributed, with a lot of weight on C. And the question, of course, is how are we doing in 2022? The answer is not as well as we would like, but I have to say that this is something that was to be expected, because the first year is, of course, one of familiarization for all the stakeholders and understanding on a deeper level, including the ship staff, about what needs to be done. And of course, with the limited controls that we as ship managers have, with the limited tools in our toolkit. So what I have to also say here is that from 2021 to 2022, we also increased our fleet by 40 or 50 ships. And so all of these results, of course, skew the outcome. The age profile has not changed, so this was not it at all. And overall, I looked at all the fleets, and what I can say is that the only outstanding one was the bulk carriers, where we saw that there's a clear reduction of the ships in C and a substantial increase in the ones in A. But of course, what can we as a ship manager do when it comes to improving CII and improving overall the performance? Because we're not the commercial operators, we cannot instruct ships where to go. We're not the charterers. We do not decide on what fuel to burn. We basically don't have this type of control over our ships. So of course, our solution to all this is analytics and optimization through digital tools. So as mentioned before, from quite early, we developed our own platform within our integrated ERP, our in-house developed ERP. I'm not going to go through all of the main functionalities that I have displayed on the screen, but there are 4 main ones that are relevant here. First of all is the digital twin benchmarking that we do, which is relevant because we were able to quite early understand how all our ships are doing. We're able to understand our statistics, let's say, with regards to EXI within the first month of 2021. When it comes to the alerts, of course, because we cannot all be looking at the million screens that we have related to analytics, we developed a tailored, targeted alert system that automatically escalates through our ranks. We developed a predictive hull inspection recommendation tool that gives a warning up to 6 months in advance of when we expect that hull cleaning is going to be needed. Because as a ship manager, I would say that hull cleaning, along with weather routing, is one of the main tools that we have to optimize here. And finally, because we want buy-in both from on board and ashore, analytics and everything, all the tools that we talk about here are available both on board and ashore. Now, a recent addition to our weapons in this fight is the monitoring. So we built a top of the state-of-the-art facility in our Kochi office of Maritime. And through that, we will be monitoring all our ships on a 24/7 basis, and therefore allow proactive optimization wherever possible. And this, of course, is available not just for the ships under our management, but also for ones not in our management, so Mariup's customers. So, but overall, as I said, for us, CII is not the end game, and for me, CII is a very lacking KPI, as was already discussed yesterday. So we as ship managers try to get a holistic view on how ships are managed, both on how they perform in their voyages, as well as how they do in terms of the machinery on board, onboard machinery utilization, and all that. So we developed this pyramid, this escalating system of aggregating all the categories into areas, and those into chief areas like voyage performance, machinery performance, and reporting quality, and finally arriving at a single number for every ship. If you have a large fleet under your management, you will understand the importance of doing something like this. It allows a quick overview and direct root cause analysis for anyone involved without needing to be deep into analytics. And of course, you arrive at a dashboard like this, where you are able to understand right away which are the good performance and your bad performance. And ultimately, of course, what is the total performance of your fleet. And because we wanted to have all the stakeholders have skin in the game, so to say, we have directly linked fleet performance with staff performance. So if you want directly with the stakeholders' variable part of their salary. So, of course, all of this is not possible without the chief weapon here, which is digitalization, as we said, and primarily MariApps, our digital solutions provider, our group company, that has built for us this massive ERP called SmartPal, integrated ERP. You can see here the various modules that are available and are integrated, as I said. And of course, PAL is not only used by us, it's used by over 1,000 ships in total. And I think MariApps has something like 60 customers overall. But the topic of voyage and performance, of course, is critical right now, and the whole ERP implementation is not always the fastest way forward, so to speak. Therefore, we built a new product that specifically targets that. It's standalone, doesn't need the rest of the ERP, and this is called SmartOps. Beyond that, we have built a set of electronic record books that's available again as a standalone module. You can see the flag approvals that we have, the class approvals on your screen. Of course, the integration, the whole chain here is understandable, that we remove paper, we have our crew enter in electronic record books that are then directly fed into analytics and therefore go directly towards optimization and decarbonization of our fleet. Finally, pilot that I would like to share with you, we did at the end of last year with a company called Signal for a limited part of our fleet. It was only done for approximately 28 ships. And what Signal does is they use behavioral science, what they call nudges, to motivate seafarers based on their past performance. So tailored, if you want, to the individual, while sitting on top of our analytic systems that we have already built. So this has worked great because it's directly integrated with a system that we already use. There was nothing, no requirement to do something on top, and it touches on the human element. And this has proven we have proven a change. We have proven that these nudges work, and now we're looking on the ways to scale up and use further. So this brings my presentation to an end. Thank you for your attention. If you found any of this interesting and would like to discuss more, please hit me here with questions, or you can see my email here, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Okay, so and now we proceed with our next speaker, Christos Papandreou from StormGeo. Christos, would you like to take over?
Hello everyone, I hope that you can hear me for now, and I hope that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. So again, hello to everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Christos Papandreou. I'm a naval architect and marine engineer, and I spent the last decade into energy efficiency, performance monitoring, and environmental compliance of the vessels. Today I would like to present you about the CII, which is considered a game changer for the shipping industry. To begin with, let's say just a few words about the imminent CII regulations. I know that you have heard a lot of about that last day, but just allow me just a small summary. So regulators and other stakeholders in the maritime industry are intensifying their efforts to cut greenhouse gas emissions for shipping. The IMO, as the international regulatory body, set a greenhouse gas reduction strategy back in 2018. One of the goals is to achieve a reduction in carbon intensity of 40% by 2030. The target is to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by improving the vessel's energy efficiency, as well as introducing new technology and low or zero carbon fuels. So in June 2021, the IMO adopted extensive new CO2 regulations applicable to all ships in general. The EXI addressing the technical efficiency of the vessels, the CII rating scheme addressing the operational efficiency, and the enhanced SEMP or the SEMP Part 3 addressing the management system. From 2023, the CII requirements will take effect for all cargo, RoPax, and cruise vessels above 5,000 GT. Now, the CII measures how efficiently a ship transports goods or passengers and is given in grams of CO2 emitted per cargo carrying capacity in nautical mile. Then the ship is given an annual rating ranging from A to E, whereby the rating thresholds will become increasingly stringent towards 2030. Lastly, while the EXI is a one-time certification targeting design parameters, the CII addresses the actual emissions in operation, which has revised targets annually. Having said all this, I would like to tell you our story, how we call it, about our continuous improvement cycle. StormGeo delivers a full cycle services suite with tools for voyage planning and execution, and expert advice on route optimization for vessel crews based on weather forecast and vessel operations. Our service suite provides real CO2 reductions and enables owners and operators to document CO2 emissions and calculate CII ratings based on reliable data. The continuous improvement cycle begins with the fact that we ensure that you can trust your data. We ensure that you continuously collect your data without any gaps and with very strict data validation. This way, you improve the data quality, as it is widely acknowledged that garbage in results to garbage out. So based on this high quality data, we do analysis and help you understand what your data tells you, how to improve your performance, and how to reduce emissions. Finally, we execute your wanted actions to improve your voyage and vessel efficiency. And of course, it's needless to say that we support you in the decision-making process until this cycle starts all over again from the beginning with your data and improves continuously towards decarbonization. So summarizing our continuous improvement cycle, we end up into three basic pillars so as to drive decarbonization, as you can see in this slide. Firstly, we secure optimal data quality. Secondly, we improve decision-making with digital and innovative tools. And thirdly, we support vessels and companies with our experts to improve vessel and voyage performance. Going back now to the CII, it is evident that each vessel should know their current CII ratings proactively so as to plan accordingly. StormGeo can assist shipping companies into that by the CII dashboards in our environmental performance of Insight. In this module, we can see the CII together with all the parameters that is composed of, such as dead weight, CO2 emissions, and sales. We can also see the required and attained annual efficiency ratio, as well as the difference in percent, which is used to create the ratings. We also create two projections, one for the next year and another one for the year that our rating will drop grade. This projection can be utilized for acquiring a better strategy. A quick and dirty, as we say, KPI into identifying the trend of the CII is also available. It is actually comparing the average CII of the year with the last 3 days. This way, we can grasp if the current way of operating our vessel damages or enhances the CII. Finally, there is a separate tab which takes into account all exclusions as of MEPC 78, the last one, which, as you are all aware, have major differences among different ship types. Now, if we need to delve deeper into our vessels, there is a graph which displays the daily rolling average of CII. You can see it in the blue line. This means that each day in the graph is the CII that the vessel would attain if the year ended into that day. This is very helpful as it can unveil trends. And these trends are shown in association with parameters like the power, as you can see the fainted gray line, or if the vessel is at sea, is maneuvering, or is at port. That way, we can better understand how these parameters affect the CII of each of our vessels. There is also a red line which displays the required CII, which we represent for standardization purposes as the middle of the C rating. Finally, you can see the bar that displays the rating boundaries from A to E with different colors associated with the annual efficiency ratio KPI thresholds. Knowing where we stand in terms of CII and how power and port time can affect it is of course very essential, but it is the one thing. In reality, however, the effort for compliance, especially with the annually diminishing targets, create a compulsory need into accurate prediction in CII ratings. This would help operators and owners better plan their CII strategy for the months and the years to come. Luckily, the simulators in StormGeo can be of great assistance into that direction. There are three types of simulators which can meet different needs. The first one, as you can see, is the next voyage simulator. The user can elaborate on information for the next voyage, as you can see the right-hand side of the slide, such as distance, fuel grades, times in idling and working, etc. Moreover, the user needs to input the desired CII that the vessel would like to attain at the end of the next voyage. Then the software will revert with the maximum speed that the vessel should sail so as to attain these requirements, together with all the information and parameters for the next voyage. Moreover, there is also a slide bar which associates the CII with the speed of the vessel for fast and quick insights. Finally, we can graphically see at the figure with the rolling average how the next voyage will impact the year-to-date CII. You can see that with the red box. Now proceeding, our next simulator is the end-of-year simulator. With this tool, we can model the rest of the year and make predictions based on that. We can input information such as the fuel grades, if we use biofuels, various settings at sea, for example, how many days the vessel would sail laden condition, with which speed and which draft, or how many days will sail in ballast condition in different speed and drafts, etc. And we can input as many of these settings as we like, because vessels do not have one specific speed or one condition or whatever. So it will be very beneficial to input all possible combinations that the vessel will probably follow. We can also input data regarding the vessel working and idle time, maintenance events, such as let's say dry dock, hull cleaning, propeller polishing, etc. Finally, there are two different uncertainty KPIs which help us bridge the uncertainty gap between our predictions and reality, and bring us on the safe side, as we call it. It is evident that the more we elaborate on these parameters, the better the CII accuracy for the predicted value at the end of the year. Inserting the aforementioned parameters of the end-of-year simulator will revert with the simulated CII at the end of the year. Actually, this is the CII that we are going to submit to the verifiers. For that purpose, it is evident that its significance is great, as the company will need to take measures in case the rating is not enough. Together with the end-of-year CII, our software will display all information such as total distance, CO2 emissions, various trends and parameters utilized in the simulation, and you can see at the bottom of the slide. Moreover, we can see graphically the rolling average of our current CII and its progression until the end of the year. You can see the red box again. I would like to point out that if we can somehow predict well these parameters, this simulation is the most crucial one, as it provides us with insight on how to effectively plan our strategy to win the CII regulation. The last simulation that I would like to present is the redelivery. It is utilized, for example, in a time charter when the owner needs to proactively know the CII rating of the vessel at redelivery so as to avoid, non-desert situations. Again, with information about the itinerary of the vessel until the redelivery, such as dates, fuel grades, days of idling and working, maintenance events, etc. And our software reverts with a table which associates the speed and the draft of the vessel with the air KPI or the attained CII, as you can see from the colors. That way, we can always negotiate with the charterers. Before I hand over the floor, I would like to point out some key takeaways. Since the CII regulations will be here for the years to come, becoming stricter and stricter, the first step is to identify our position and be able to predict the rating that we are going to submit to the wayfarers. Our simulator tool provides, apart from that, the chance to play around and identify not only the parameters that can enhance our CII, which, more or less are generally known, but how the effect of each parameter on the CII affects the CII for each of our vessels. This way, we are able to push operation and chartering in the correct direction and effectively plan the steps to follow. And we can do this proactively without the need to pay the bill at the end of the year and start planning for the following. It is crucial, to understand that CII should be a decision from the management because not a single department can tackle it alone. Finally, and apart from all the above, we should always take good care of our vessels, their efficiency by continuously monitoring their performance. We should never, by any means, let them fall, as it has terrible effects into costs, into emissions, into regulations, and in general, into the future proof of our business. Establishing operational procedure, let's say, such as monitor the idling time of our vessels, especially in hot and shallow waters, ensure, the performance in our fleet. Our tools can greatly assist you on that perpetual race towards decarbonization. Don't hesitate to get in touch for any information or questions, and we can willingly provide your assistance you required. With all that, I would like to thank you. I will stick around if you have any questions, and that's it. I believe that I'm done.
Thank you, Christos. That was very interesting to see what StormGeo is doing. Deep dive into your tools for sure. So next up is Nelson Morais from BOGERD Martin. Nelson?
Yes. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Let me just share my screen. And there you go. You should have that now.
Yes, we can see.
Awesome. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Nelson. I'm the head of technology at BOGERD Martin. We are a charts and publications and nautical navigation solutions provider in general. And today I'd like to talk to you about how technologies can benefit fleet managers' operations, especially in the context of the current fuel prices, the additional pressure arising from CO2 regulations and CO2 emissions and CII ratings, rather. So, as you all know, a lot of factors come into play for calculating CII, as the two presenters before me have already indicated, for what is ultimately a fairly simple piece of math, the way that CII is calculated. So, again, you will have heard the CII term quite often by now, but from my point of view as well, I'd like to first get into what CII is, how we understand it, and what a CII rating might have of an impact on your fleet, and ultimately what to do about it. So, as indicated before, the carbon intensity indicator is a consolidated KPI that indicates the ship's operating efficiency in terms of CO2 emissions per ship per mile, which will indeed become increasingly strict. We're on a downward slope in terms of what is allowed for CO2 emissions, and will continue to do so. And the ratings indeed go from A through E, whereas E is the poorest rating you could get, and which the ratings D and E will become completely unacceptable by the time we hit 2025, which brings along a number of consequences. So let's have a look at what CII ratings actually have of an impact on your fleet. So the vessels that are non-compliant, vessels that are scoring DRE ratings by the time it's 2025, will be subject to an increased level of scrutiny by port state control and other local authorities. They will be subject to fines. They will be subject to detention times. There will be your banks and other financial institutions and insurers and charterers that will no longer be in a position to do business with your vessels should they not have a satisfactory CII rating. That said, the impact of CII is general. It's everywhere. It's both on the positive side and on the negative side. On the positive side, meaning those that are willing to adopt measures right off the bat and make sure that they are compliant and stay compliant are looking at investments ranging from 15 to 50,000 euros for a single vessel just to get hard and software set up to be on top of the game. And then on the other side of the scale, there's those that are financially not capable of making those decisions right now, and those that are simply waiting it out and seeing what happens, and they're potentially facing costs rising much and much higher, potentially up to 200,000 euros per vessel. Now, it's upon receiving a rating, a CII rating, through all the reporting that's being done, that the vessel operator, vessel owner is required to take a corrective measure. And there are obviously a whole wide variety of corrective measures that can be taken in order to improve CII rating. And these are just a few of those that I'm showing you here. For instance, voyage optimization. Anything that goes into voyage optimization, route planning, weather route optimization, managing your just-in-time arrivals, which is a very critical one, which we'll get into later. Doing your performance reporting online, getting a general increase in efficiency energy through EXI modifications, the way that your ship is fitted, and obviously reducing fuel consumption and CO2 emissions. Now, what we like to do is we like to cut these corrective measures into two main structures. Those structures being modifications that can be done to individual vessels through SEMP. So making modifications to how the auxiliary engine is used, making changes to the way lights are used and heating, making small adjustments to the main engine and so forth. So things that really affect that one single vessel we're looking at. And then we have the second category, which covers a range of modifications that apply directly to the operational model of your organization. Changes such as attaining the optimal RPM to speed profile, getting your weather routing right, getting your just-in-time arrivals right so that you're actually just in time, hull and propeller maintenance planning and stuff like that. So that is something that we, that's the way that we like to segregate these two main structures. And it's primarily for the second group that we believe that machine learning technology can be of enormous benefit. You know, creating that awareness of what is currently happening on your fleet is arguably the most important first step towards creating a gain in improving efficiency. And if we can then combine that with a clear insight into what environmental and financial gains can be achieved with our solution, that opens up the floor for making educated decisions. So let's throw a few numbers at this CII story. What I'm showing here is that, for instance, just-in-time arrival, just that bit, just-in-time arrival could be held responsible for up to 30% of loss in efficiency due to vessels having to idle in port. That's a huge number. I'll get into that more in just a bit. Then voyage efficiency, which is voyage planning and execution, which is weather routing, which is getting that speed to RPM ratio correct, is good for another 13%. So these are all studies that have been done. And then technical state, obviously pertaining to the state of the hull, the propeller shaft, the engine shaft, maintenance to these things. That actually amounts up to another additional, say, 10%. I'm generalizing a little bit here, but I think you get where I'm going with this. So what we're seeing nowadays is more and more organizations are popping up, beginning to develop solutions that provide very detailed insights into specific aspects of these measures that can be taken. These services that are coming up, they're young and they're hard to come by, and especially for smaller shipping companies that they're often found on waiting lists in order to be able to get these services, and in doing so, they are missing out on the understandable value of the technology that is currently at hand. If you then add to that with sensor data being the holy grail, the absolute holy grail of offering excellent granularity in terms of data point harvesting frequency, the cost of the services tends to get rather high. And then numbers vary in terms of how much we can actually do to affect consumption and CO2 emissions, depending on which angle the challenge is viewed from. So as an example, let's take the hull cleaning frequency. Studies have shown that optimizing that particular part of your operations for 100% would end you up with a general increase of, say, up to 10% in efficiency, which is also true for weather route optimization, which probably has a little bit of a higher impact. And don't get me wrong, those are significant numbers. But there's one measure that stands above water and far outweighs all the others, and that is speed reduction. So with ships fighting the never-ending battle of trying to get where they're going at the time they're expected to be there, shipping companies are currently being forced to make adaptations to their schedules to try and make all of this happen at a much slower rate. However, these ships are still subject to a large number of variables that could keep them out of port and at anchor, and often for days at a time. And the captain usually finds out about these delays when they've arrived, and that forces the ship to idle in place, continuing to consume fuel, continuing to emit CO2. And on top of that, they've had to spend an excess of fuel for getting to that destination too early, although according to their own schedule, they were right on time. So had the captain known in advance that there was going to be a significant delay at the port of destination, they would have been able to recalculate their overall speed, slow the vessel down, make sure that they are there just in time, thusly using less fuel, emitting less CO2, and therefore dramatically improving their CII rating. Now, I want you to remember those staggering numbers I've mentioned before. So what have we done from our side? With Chart Fleet Intelligence, we've partnered with the genius brains of Marine Digital and their team of highly skilled data scientists and managed to develop a machine learning algorithm that actually looks into a vessel's historical data. It identifies inefficiencies. It should suggest corrective actions that maximize potential benefit from both environmental and financial points of view. And it's with a combination of noon reports, the known vessel history, and if desired sensor data, we can create an accurate analysis of the vessel's current operational efficiency. Now, this analysis is then translated into various understandable outputs. Not only do these outputs provide immediate insight in the vessel's current CII rating and projected future rating with current operational model, but also possible gains financially and environmentally with the suggested corrective measures in place. This is achieved by creating a digital twin of the subscribing vessel, for which we do hydrodynamic modeling based on a survey that needs to be filled out to begin with. And then as soon as we've got that digital twin, the algorithm's logic is applied to this digital twin in a number of different scenarios. Information such as how long has the ship been operating a specific weather type, what is the hull cleaning frequency, what is the engine and propeller shaft maintenance state, and so on. And more than that is included in the factors that are considered when doing these analyses. The view you're looking at right now is a screenshot of the fleet benchmarking module, allowing you to benchmark one vessel to another, one voyage to another, one port to another, and so on and so on and so on, again, to aid in making educated decisions as to what needs to be done next. So the way to enroll in Chart Fleet Intelligence is very simple. With just an IMO number and MMSI number, we can actually immediately begin doing this historical analysis. If we complement that information with noon reports and the required information from the hydrodynamic survey, we can actually develop that digital twin and immediately unleash the full potential of the machine learning algorithm. It'll then begin to learn about the ship's current operations and will continue to adapt to any changes it finds in those operations, making sure that the ship owners and operators stay ahead of the game all the time. The view you're currently looking at, by the way, is the weather factor summary, displaying how much time the vessel has spent in good weather with its specific definition. And at the bottom of the screen is actually translated the potential gains that could have been achieved had the optimization been applied to 100%, for that matter. Then, what is not unimportant to state is that the groundbreaking way that we've looked at this whole scenario makes this service a affordable way of gaining business critical information that repays itself nearly instantaneously. And one of those parts that makes this that sets us apart, we believe, is our noon reporting. So it's digital noon reporting, but it doesn't require any changes from the shipping company and even from the vessel. So your existing noon reporting structure, we've all got our standards. You just send that noon report into our system. Our AI crunches it, takes out all the data points that it requires from that noon report, and translates that into information that we can use to gain all of this information about your fleet and make sure that it's translated into outputs that are clear and easy to understand. So what I'm showing you in this screenshot here is the speed to power curve for a specific vessel, showing you with a number of lines, blue being the theoretical fuel consumption line deduced by the AI, pink being the actual reported fuel consumption, and the blue dots are noon report data that we've received and parsed, and the orange ones are actually suspicious noon report data points. They are completely off the scale, as you can see, and the AI is trained to identify these and adapt to those situations. You'll also see a red box indicating that a propeller check is recommended, and that's because there is a 6% deviation between actual fuel consumption reported and the theoretical model that we've made with the AI, indicating that a propeller check may very well be recommended. And then lastly, on that same screen, you'll see the amount of time that a vessel has spent in particular water types, which then plays into what your hull cleaning frequency should be looking like. And then lastly, although CII regulations are and will remain in a pilot phase until 2025, I would like to urge anyone to have a serious look at our solution, because you see, apart from potentially saving enormously from a monetary point of view, I think the ultimate goal is to indeed actively cooperate in creating a greener shipping industry, regardless of regulations that are not yet fully enforced. There are a couple of numbers on the screen. If we achieve 12% fuel economy, that would mean we could save $240,000 per single vessel per year. And of course, we would also save 600 tons of CO2 emissions from being jetted into the air. So I think that's something to think about. Take it in and consider that. Do feel free to get in touch with us at sales@bogertmartin.com. We've got an expert team on standby for any and all questions that you may have. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Nelson. That was indeed very interesting. Yeah, great insight into BOGERD Martin. Absolutely. So yeah, without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor now over to Hoppe Marine, our friends and partners, and specifically Uwe Altenbach.
Yes, thanks a lot. So I would then take over the screen and just tell me if you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect. So thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to talk here, to talk to you, and a warm welcome from my side here from the head office of Hoppe Marine in Hamburg. Yeah, let's start our journey and allow me to take you with me and find out why high quality data is mandatory for fleet optimization in regards to future emission compliance and cost reduction. Just a few words to my person. My name is Uwe Altenbach. I'm a mechanical engineer of 17 years of experience in the automotive industry, and that means engine performance engine testing with a focus on test automation and standardization. Yeah, the automotive industry means this little small engines that you mount on a rack and measure fuel economy and so on. So you may ask now, what is this guy doing here? I have now started here in Hoppe in June of this year, and my only experience in maritime business is this ship that has a close connection to Hoppe. This is a museum ship. And yeah, I'm working there now for 5 years as a volunteer, and it's the opposite of being carbon neutral. So my idea is to support you to speed up future decarbonization. So, now, what happens? I have a problem here, I guess. So main topics, I would like to have a closer look at the data path and the data processing while the data is transported from ship to shore. Also, I would like to take you with me for a closer look why a customer choose us, Hoppe, as a holistic data provider for his company. A few key facts regarding Hoppe. We are worldwide about 200 employees, have installed 9,000 systems and about 250,000 of sensors. Considering this has been done since 1949 when Hoppe was founded, and these systems have been installed on about 7,500 vessels. So for this, we need a worldwide network of professional colleagues in production, service, and sales. And not to forget, we have a huge number of global operating partners and agents. So we are traditionally from the ship's measurement side, meaning we provide all kinds or a wide scope of sensors when it comes to fluid measurement, meaning drought, for example, but also flow. And if you combine this with actuators, meaning for example, a valve actuator, and also add a control unit, then you have a closed loop control system that you need, for example, for an anti-healing system. Additionally comes the tasks or the products like the shaft parameters that we all being capable to connect to our data serving unit. What we do right now already is all systems that you get from us are ready for ship-to-shore connection. And also we are quite familiar with retrofit solutions, so your existing ship can be with easy, there's low demand to connect this to the shore side or first to your ship's VSAT system. What ship-to-shore is about. For sure, we trust in our good sensor environment, and we want to forward this data to shore side. As I said in the beginning, this is the basement, the fundament for further decision taking and deriving predictions also. Ship to shore is not just a simple data transfer. You have to consider a few, I would say, stones on your way, and I would like to go into that. What we do first is we connect our sensors, and not just ours, also the nautical data, if you want, and additional devices to our processing units, our programmable logic controller, and put this data into the database. On the ship side, there's also the possibility, and I will come to that later, to visualize the data for the crew, because we always want to take the crew with us and not skip these specialists for the operational part. And then in the same moment, the data is encrypted for the ship to shore transmission. Then we put it on this cloud side. We do also a data analysis and look if the data is reasonable, and we do a plausibilization task. After this, we grant access via a web interface to look at the data's consistency, and also allow our customers to look if all devices are in operation. Then finally, via the API interface, we roll out the red carpet to the here also attended specialist for visualization, simulation, and optimization. You may think a complex scope of channels or signals is necessary to get a good overview of your ship's performance, but this is not the case. It is more or less two handful of signals that is enough. And I would cluster it in the nautical signals, such as GPS position, speed through water, rudder angle, and so on. And further, next step is the ship's performance part. This is mainly the main engine. And these two signals are important, that you have the shaft power information, the physical data, and also the fuel consumptions. Not to forget about the ship's trim position, because this has a large effect on the ship's performance. On board, I was pointing on that before already, I was mentioning that before, we have a system that is called Crew Connect. So you can connect to any computer system that is within the ship's network. For sure, if you have a wireless network on board, you can also use a handheld, and this grants you access to the ship's main data. You can also configure that depending on your needs. If you're a person of the nautical environment, you can just focus on the nautical data. If you're more the machine crew, you can focus on the tank content, for example, and on the machine power. On shore side, when the data has been transferred, you can assess your complete fleet. And you see on the first view already of the status of the home unit, that is the name of our PLC, and see if there is errors, if everything is working fine, or if you maybe also make a notification that problems have to be sorted out. Talk to your crew or order this on our side, depending. The next level is we also provide a service that is called Data Inspector. And this is also, it is an information where you can analyze main data over a certain time span and have a closer look. Especially, we are focusing there on sensor plausibility and sensor drift. Here, the example, you see the torque at standstill, and this over the time of about 1 year. And also our latest systems, they inform you if a zero calibration is necessary. So overall, we can say we are an independent supplier of high quality data. I would like now to go into the use case that I was announcing in the beginning, why a ferry company with regular services choose us for a holistic data provider. So there's two main pillars: the strategic, the operative, the technical, and for sure not to forget the optimizational part that I would now go a bit into detail. So for sure, the ferry companies are suffering, as everyone else, of the more and more complex compliance and reporting tasks of their crew. And these dull and I would call it repetitively task. Who can do that better than an automational data providing system? So that is where we jump in. Also, the benefit is that we take the complete responsibility for the data we collect on board until we provide it on shore. Also, big benefit is the savings due to not more necessary service costs because of remote support and also providing information if systems are not okay. Coming to the operative part. So if you have noticed an issue on your vessel, it is no problem to scroll back as soon as the ship has a better data connection to go in detail on this certain time when this issue might have happened and figure out in detail about maybe a certain device that has been non-functional or whatever you have to focus on. So a notification engine. So think a few seconds of what you would like to be informed about. So this can be any minimum or maximum value from one of your sensors. It can be, but also algorithms we can put in as little formulas. So if then, for example, if we have high winds or high current, please do not consider 0 point at the propeller shaft. Yeah, more or less everything is free, configurable, and implementable. Technical reasons. Yeah. So you can be sure that the data that is encrypted by our PLC system is being saved and cannot be accessed from outside. I pointed on that before, so the remote service, meaning we can jump on the system from outside, and especially if you increase the scope of your sensor environment, this is no problem for us to add this, not without the need to go on board. Also, the online documentation we provide via the system, that means all kind of systems we have installed there, the documentation is available and can also be actualized. So, and again, all this data, and considering you take you some time to collect it, that you have a valid and robust database can then be used. And I say it again, we would like then to roll out the data, assess you who are also attending here, our data via API interface, and do all the statistical engineering and focusing on the optimizational part. That's from my side. Thanks a lot for listening, and feel free to ask any questions or come back to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uwe. Of course, it's no secret that we as Schulte Group have been working with Hoppe very closely. We have a long history of telemetry installations for the owned fleet for a good few years now, and all I can say is from own experience is that with telemetry you think that you solve a great number of problems, but you actually create a whole lot of other problems. So what Uwe is saying here about the quality in data is critical, of course. So I think we can touch upon all of this later. So thank you very much. And of course, without further ado, let's proceed to Nautilus Labs, and more specifically to the presentation by Jan Willemsen.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. A short introduction of myself might be relevant as well. I have been in the industry for about 30 years. I sailed for the first 10, so I'm a master mariner training, but then I spent the next 10 years commercially operating ships for a major Scandinavian carrier. And then about 10 years ago, I took the step into technology, realizing that digital transformation would start becoming relevant at some point. It was a little early in those days, but nevertheless, I did that. So the last 10 years, I have been working with a number of tech companies, for a few tech companies, but also as a chief digital officer for one of the world's largest tanker companies. So I've also done very large-scale implementations. So when we come to the Q&A session, I'm also very happy to answer questions around my experiences from that time. Today, I'm joining you as Chief Commercial Officer for Nautilus Labs, and I'm going to take you on a little bit journey of where I think some of the disconnects are in the business practices and how we think those can be changed in relationship to CII particularly. A few words about Nautilus Labs. We are a AI machine learning company. We are celebrating 6 years in next month. We are heavily backed by Microsoft, among others. And we just took in another $34 million before Christmas. So we are probably one of the outfits that are sinking the most money into machine learning and AI to solve these problems. We have major carriers using us in basically all segments. One of the first things I wanted to bring up is the challenge you had between pre-voyage and active voyage. Basically, there are disconnects in a couple of places that are very comparable in wet or dry bulk, but also from the liner side, when you start breaking down the business processes, you will see the same thing. The pre-voyage planning typically comes down to the fixture, if you are a spot company, and then the active voyage operated by an operations department. But you would tend to see the same outcome in a liner operation, where you would have trade or liner departments doing one thing and then handing the vessel over later. And this creates a bit of challenge, because omitting variables from voyage outcome analysis will make the vessel ostensibly not optimal by arrival. Changing in commercial markets, changing in bunker markets, vessel-specific performance changes, which happens consistently, and especially on a container vessel, for example, changes in the stack will have an effect throughout the voyage as well. And you'll have, obviously, the part that we all know about, the weather is constantly changing, and that includes currents and sea states and all that. So if you look at how most shipping companies execute this from a business process, you have some sort of initial planning. It's there is a commercial intel that's being used in order to figure out which vessel is going to lift what cargo. You have a distance, you have a bunker cost, and from that you will find an optimal speed. There's always going to be a trade-off between time cost versus fuel cost, considering that fuel cost is exponential, but time cost is not. So you will always have a trough on the cost, but you have to also consider freight markets and understand where you are making the most money. And the key thing for doing this is that there is finding this speed where your TCE equivalent is maximized, is the speed that you want to fix your voyage on, or plan for it if you don't fix individual voyages. But the key thing that has happened lately is that in certain markets where you have very high freight rates and you have high bunker costs at the same time, you had some give in the previous years where if you were plus or minus half a knot or a knot, it didn't matter so much. The shape of this curve now, FYI, is very sharp. That means that if you are on a non-optimal speed during any part of this voyage, you're actually going to leave a lot of time charter equivalent on the table. So you then go out and you fix this, and you plan it, and then it's handed over to operations. At operations, you reach out typically to a weather routing company, whereas the distance previously would be taken from an automated software at some point, and you will then execute on fixed parameters. But wait a minute here. The distance that you are executing on now tends to be quite a bit different from the one that you have already optimized on. So if the distance has changed, so has your optimal speed. And obviously then when you come to the end of the voyage, as you said in the Morais settlements, voyage accounting is updated, and we've all gotten in trouble at some point if you have a P&L where your voyage accounting differs substantially from what you pre-voyage have planned, which is a cash flow problem. But more importantly here, you've managed to execute the voyage earning less money than you could have theoretically. This has gone on for quite a while. People haven't cared so much about these disconnects because we work in the silos that we're in, and that's our reality. If you spend your lifetime in operations, you tend to stay there. If you spend your lifetime commercially, you might become a charterer and eventually a commercial director, but very seldom do people move across and see it holistically. Same thing between the owners and the charters. But with the new rules now coming into play, we're going to have to start thinking a little bit across these processes and see what can be done effectively to reduce the inefficiencies that they induce. One of the second disconnects tends to sit between the owner and the charterer because they have very different incentives. I think there are good intents in most cases, but a lot of owners have experienced charterers banging them over the head over many, many years with performance claims, and vice versa. The owners don't really care haven't historically really cared that much about the fuel consumption because they don't pay for the fuel in 80% of the cases. So there is a need to build some trust. The way that we manage that at the moment at Knowledge Labs is that we allow for a high level of trust and visibility if that's what both the owner and charterer wants to do. But in the case the trust isn't there, which is very often the case, and the owner does not want to share all the onboard data, we work with an owner permissioning. But we still do all the advanced AI from all the data available from both sides. And then we produce insights that is then where we meet the vessel halfway, where basically today shipping is operated on email, not on platforms that you log into. So we have a managed services team that basically gives orders to ships, and we're gonna go into a little more details on the chartering side. The way that we execute a fully managed service is that we are agnostic of where the data comes from. At the bottom of this pyramid, we will pick in noon reporting data, we will take in sensor data, and we will need all of them because in most cases you won't have drafts as sensor data, for example. So you do need the RFDs, you do need the drafts. But then if possible, there are flow meters and torque meters. We use what we can. And then we create, using the AI, like some other companies, we then use our stack to create a vessel-specific digital twin of this vessel. Now, why is it important that this one is vessel-specific? Because everybody who sailed on a ship knows that some ships will weather slightly different. It's not just about the static fuel curve, because the fuel curve tends to be normalized for one weather system. So the problem is that you're not getting a very vessel-specific optimization. We then bring that into a daily automated recommendation that goes on email, which also our team who deals with the crews directly on a daily basis will hand that over. Now, one of the challenges we see there is that AI, as advanced as it is, it can induce errors if you have floating sensors and so on and so forth. So we find it very helpful to not just hand over a platform to the operators and say, why don't you log in here every day and then tell the vessel what to do. What tends to work much better is that you tell the operators, who often have 8 to 20 vessels to execute upon, who tends to be focusing what he should be doing for the vessel that's arriving in port in 2 days from now or tomorrow, and should focus on that and not necessarily focus on the vessel that is mid-ocean. What we do by running all this automatically and producing it as a service is that we actually make sure that this optimal route that we create gets recalculated on a daily basis, and the vessel remains fully TCE optimized all the way into port. So this is what, however, we do have a platform, and this is what it looks like. On this picture, you can see there are 3 columns here. These are basically voyage calculations, traditional voyage calculation, where we pull the data from the accounting system from the commercial operator side. We pull the execution data from the vessel and whatever noon reporting system often the owner has. It then uses that vessel-specific model, and it can on some vessels be very advanced. Like, for example, on an LNG vessel, we will calculate how the gas is weathering, so we understand the boil off and can give recommendations to that as well. But typically on a tanker or bulk or a container vessel, it is a recommendation in RPM for that day. In this case, you see a blue dot marked. This one tells us where we will, and you will see the TCE on the top row, i.e. that is the time charter equivalent, the earnings you will be making that day if you execute on the most optimal route. Let's think about this now, because it is actually important to have the financials go into the route optimization, which you don't get if you just go out to a weather routing company and you get it on a lowest consumption. Because in a high market, you actually do at times want to do something that is less optimal in terms of fuel consumptions if you can earn more. The second row here is basically maintaining RPM, because there are occasions where you need to do that. And lastly, you basically set the date. We can also do a combination of this. When, for example, there are times when you need to float on a TC level. So below 4 before, you have to stay on 12.5 knots. Otherwise, we're free to be flexible. So there are sub aspects about this. Now, here comes the interesting part. We're coming into CII. In each of these columns, you see that on the bottom, second lowest row there's an A B to the left, and there's an A and A. So you can actually, when you are executing this, if you are executing this voyage today on maximizing your TCE, you're going to go towards a B. If you do the other two, you go towards an A. Now, what is coming up next here is that we're going to have a fourth column now, as soon as we hit 2023, where you can have the option of choosing to actually solve at the same time, including the vessel-specific model, including the financial aspects that you're at, everything being for the most effective CII grade. This is going to be important in the relationship between the charterer and the operator, and we believe that a charterer that can see a screen together with an owner and understand where the vessel is at. On the top side here, you see basically the months ticking on and where your vessel's at. It's actually quite a bad example because this vessel has no problem, but if you start moving into a yellow here, you're approaching a D or an E. Now, in shipping, there are times when you do things that you normally wouldn't do. In many cases now, we're talking to owners and charterers. They are starting to include requirements that vessels are being redelivered on the same CII grade as they were received. In order to execute on such a contract, if you receive a vessel halfway through the year, it's not your fault what the last commercial operator who had it in on TC did for the first few months. So you need to understand where is your starting point. The lower part here might be too small for you to see, but that's actually years. So as the rules tighten up, you see how this white line now, it represents with current operating practices that you're executing on at the moment. This is, you can see when you will start getting into trouble. And I think this type of visualization, there's a lot of suppliers that do it. I think what we uniquely are now being able to produce to our clients is that we actually have at the same time an ability to change the operating mode. So we can maximize the TC as long as it's humanly possible throughout the year. And if we in November hit problem, then we do the opposite. But also, if you have, like we've seen in the last couple of years, extreme freight situations for shorter periods, you let it go. And then you just make sure you know where we're at so that you then can start correcting for it later during that measuring year, so to say. I'd like to just wrap up with, I think, one of our proudest references that we have gotten recently. Total Energies, which is not a small carrier, they are now requiring any vessel who comes in, any LNG vessel who comes in and operates for them, to have data collection on board and utilizing our solutions. And this is the way we're hoping to see more and more companies go, that they end up partnering with somebody like us in order to make sure that they can meet the requirements in a way that is working and functional for both owners and charterers. That's all I really had for today, unless there are questions.
Thank you, Jan. That was, again, very interesting to see. I always appreciate how Nautilus is more commercially minded, of course. And yeah, and this actually beautifully bridges over to our next speaker, Varun Kumar, who is from TMA Bulk, who is a commercial operator. So let's see how what a commercial operator's perspective on the whole matter is.
Thank you, Frank. Good evening, everybody. Can you see my screen? Thank you. Got frozen out. Okay, my name is Varun. Actually, it was quite interesting for me to listening to the early part. Everything so relevant, like what Jan was talking about, with how we never have a full view of what is optimization, where commercial optimization, technical optimization, and I mean, it means different things to different eyes, whereas the shipping is one entity, and it's even operated by different interests. So the challenge is more, and the need to see it as one. So just a brief introduction about myself. I was an engineer to start with. I was with Maersk Line before, and then I was working as a superintendent later, and then as a manager of a performance center. where we were looking at the entire fleet's performance, and we even journeyed through how how we view performance. And then I came to Hamburg as a superintendent again, and now I'm working as an efficiency manager with TMA. To say a brief thing about TMA, we are a commercial operator, so we are a pool of bulk carriers, 25 to 30. I would say fix is 25, and we move plus or minus 5. And the main thing that in this role that I enjoy from my previous role is that it gives a holistic overview. That's why I could connect with what Jan was saying, that how optimization is holistic. And it gives a great advantage to see when you are sitting in a flow where there is chartering and operations and technical operations. And as an efficiency as an efficiency manager, I almost sit or have a view of what's happening, and it really it cannot be said any better. So just to go into my topic now, I'm going to be just talking about speed variance, from a CII perspective. And speed variance, I think, was it you? I can't remember. One of the speakers was talking about how still speed variance is a significant potential in this day and age. If you have been listening to our presentation this evening, we are cutting edge technology. We have talked about, almost looking at the vessel from our living rooms with all operatings inside, but still we have speed variance or speed optimization as the biggest potential saving. And this I cannot subscribe more. Both from my operational experience with both the companies, I would say, and also from a commercial perspective where I see this is. What do we mean by speed variance is that basically the variation between what is the actual speed required for the leg and then what is the speed that the vessel does and how consistently is it doing. And then the consequences of it. Is the vessel doing faster, slower? Is it catching up later? What are the consequences now? Where is it just a fuel penalty or missing a ETA deadline or coming early? And later on, where is a CII issue also? As we talked about, is 30% or even close. So that's what I would just touch briefly upon it. So when we talk about speed variance, first is talking about in general as a voyage planning. And as you see, when optimizing a voyage, actually most part of the optimization of a voyage happens well before the ship is even leaving the port, probably just coming into from the next voyage, last voyage. And not to sound repetitive, but we talk about like cargo lifting, trimming, constants, fuel, water, how much it's taking, what is the route optimization, what's the weather there, what is the future market where the vessel is going, what is the bunker market where the vessel is going. So all this is actually collectively being optimized. For example, if you are one entity looking at it from end to end. And that is where sometimes there is a challenge, because shipping is a diversified entity and people are pulling at each end because they see optimization as different. But if we assume it, then our voyage optimization is basically starting out much before the voyage starts. And this is just a small, a small study that I found online, where what part of optimization actually, let's say, represents potential. And I cannot authenticate this study, but I can approve it based on my experience, because like we once again say, the hull, the speed, waste heat recovery system are very unique and specific. But once again, as you see, speed optimization and hull, which is also a little bit related to speed, playing a big role. And all things starts before the voyage starts. And this one here, like I said, this is from our own experience also as a commercial operator, where we, for example, after I come in here with the efficiency department, I try to categorize our waste and we try to organize, basically improving our commercial bottom line. And also from efficiency, fuel efficiency point of view, we have tried to categorize this into these categories like cargo, cost, cleaning, route optimization. And it's still, like we talked about earlier in the studies and even from experience, we heard that speed was a big thing. And even here, speed optimization, which is represented here by on-time arrival, and some part of it is a technical optimization, is the biggest potential, even from my own experience here. This is just an overview of what we have achieved. And here you can see the blue part is on-time arrival, such a significant part even in this short time. And once again, I mean, that's where I cannot stress the need for speed optimization, even in this digital age, that we are not actually doing the correct speed that the vessel needs to go from point A to point B. Simply, there is so much room. Okay, so when we talk about speed optimization, I mean, when we are talking speed variance and speed optimization, the first step is actually finding the right ETA. For me, coming from a container fleet, this was almost straightforward. Yeah, what is it? The ETA is already given years ago. You just run with it from A to B, A to B. No, actually, in predominantly most of the markets, the ETA is also something that you decide. Yeah, there is only conditions given for you, and this ETA, like you said, is decided by TCE, decided by market situation, decided by bunkers, decided by your voyage strategy. But what I notice is that very seldom we give a ETA to the captain. I would actually even go out and say that we don't give a ETA at all. And this is the biggest drawback when we come to say with speed optimization, because I mean, speed is distance by time, and without a ETA, the captain is not going to be able to find out. And some of the things that is hampering us from giving a ETA is like here you can see, this is a very practical experience from my side that I share. Sometimes the vessel is just given a speed instruction, okay, run at 13 knots towards, let's say, Luanda. But Luanda has a port, will have, there will be no midnight pilots, but the vessel will be coming in at 1800, meaning nobody is telling the captain, okay, you don't need to come at 1800, you can come tomorrow at 080, slow down, adjust your ETA accordingly, don't need to come and anchor. Sometimes there's port congestion and all this is common, yeah. And even sometimes there is commercial consideration. That's why once again I want to touch with Jan says the NOR. To me, it was a revelation coming from a very technical operator point of view, from managing a technical team, to come in and understand commercial, where even in this day and age, the NOR is really broad. It gives you, it never allows you to give an ATA. There is a big point of view to optimize. Like it defines that if you come in on a Friday evening, then your time starts counting from Monday, meaning the vessel, there is no need for the vessel to run so fast and come on a Friday evening or Saturday. So this is all we have to consider when we calculate the ETA, and that's exactly how we do it. And that is the first step when we talk about speed optimization. Yeah. So first is to understand what is the optimal ETA, and then we are working against the industry practice where the captain is probably sailing with this strategy for quite some time, that he runs as fast as he can and stops there. Yeah, but this is the first step. And second step is basically finding the right speed. You have the ETA and you have the distance, so you have the time and distance, but it is never so straightforward that you get a speed and this is what you do. Yeah, and this is where the weather routing company comes in. This is where the captain's experience comes in. This is where the commercial operator's experience comes in. But our aim is to basically stick as close to possible to the optimal speed, or let's say the CAMSI speed required. Yeah, and this is another thing, very ideal. Many times the optimized voyage is interpreted as constant RPM, but actually our aim is to keep a constant load, because keeping a constant RPM means your speed through water is changing actually as per the weather. Our aim on optimized voyage or the best voyage is where we keep a constant power as far as possible. And this is what, once again, we talk about optimized speed, because there are some limitations. It is never like a fancy, like what this graph says, it is never that easy, but at least what we need to understand and we need to approach from a theoretical perspective is the best voyage is a voyage with constant power and not constant RPM. This is some of our examples, once again, with speed variance where there were vessels going in. You can see here our weather operator here. So we took some inputs and then adjusted the speed. Basically, this is a small bulk carrier consuming 20 tons a day, and we still managed to save around 14 tons of fuel by just making an on-time arrival. And this, I can talk from my experience with big company, small company, big commercial operators. There is still a significant room to do this speed optimization. And this is just an example of what is our potential when we first started observing and started, let's say, tracking this. As you can see, close to 200 tons in 6 months. So this is simply by observing ETAs, by then adjusting and then monitoring the vessel. And now I just want to touch upon what I am just running out of time, but I will just take a minute and just run it up a little bit quick. There are some challenges when we talk about speed optimization, and some things are not very straightforward. It is not as easy as we give a ETA to the captain, because there are certain things that is more fluid and changing. For example, there are ports with first come first serve priority. This is, I find, a little bit too from a different age altogether. I mean, we are simply like, there are examples in South African ports where we are running 20 ships to the same one slot, and we are almost burning around 300, 400 or 700 tons collectively every week, even though this vessel will not berth. And this, of course, is a little bit of a bigger fish to fry, but we can definitely do, with all the noise generated with green, and we have to go be an economically conservative. In my opinion, this first come first serve policy is the single biggest hurdle, actually burning more fuel all across the world, actually significantly across the world, because first come first serve means you are just competing for one slot with 20 vessels burning 20 times the fuel and coming. You can easily do something a little bit more. Actually, that's what I have. I just try to run through with less time, but I'm finished. Thank you, and I can take some questions if you have something specific, or if you want to elaborate more, you can hit me up on LinkedIn, and I'm really passionate to talk about this, not just from a compliance point of view, even from a performance point of view.
Great. Thank you very much, Varun. That was, of course, very insightful, completely different perspective than anything else we heard over the last couple of days. Which brings us, of course, to the discussion part of this afternoon. So overall, a great number of questions have been asked, but yet at the same time answered. So I was looking to see if there are any ones that have not been answered yet, and could not find any. So I will put this question to the floor. Over the last 2 days, we've been talking about CII. CII is the buzzword, the key topic here, and of course, everyone's focus is on that. In my view, it's very good that it's brought a common language for all the stakeholders, one KPI for everyone to focus on, as was said yesterday. It's fairly easy by everyone to follow, with the color coding and what have you, A, B, C, D, E grading. But at the same time, in my opinion, it's grossly lacking. And the biggest fallacy, if you want, of CII, the way I see it, is that it does not take into account cargo. And so what this means is that if a ship wants to improve its CII rating for a given voyage at a given speed, it can load less, because we'll have less draft and therefore will consume less. But that is an absolute destructive scenario, if you ask me, because at the end of the day, we end up carrying less, we end up damaging our planet more. So I would like to ask you all, one by one actually, what your thoughts on CII as a target are and how it could possibly be improved. And I would like to start with the last speaker. I'll work backwards. I'll start with Varun.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I would say it's a missed opportunity in a balanced way. Yeah, I mean, I understand it's a step forward. There's a lot of intention in it. I don't deny that. There's a lot of good intent in it. But I also feel that could we have been more a little bit holistic about it? But also thinking about it, maybe at some level it's how to say, they have agreed because the owner, out of his own commercial interest, will tend to load the ship more, and then as a regulation you try to balance that with just measuring the fuel. I do not know this, just it is like at some point a missed opportunity, but I would also weigh it in with, for example, my own personal experience. If not for the CII, I will not have a job, this job at least. I will have another job, yeah. So it's very strange that in the end, like I showed in the graph, it is commercially actually beneficial for all the owners to save and look at fuel efficiency, but we never did it all these years. I mean, let's not be so particular about somebody, but it's never happened. So at least the CII came in, and then the owner started looking at it, investing some money in the whole infrastructure, and we started looking at optimization, and now the owners, at least at some level, already find that it's also commercially benefit to optimize. So I think that's one benefit apart from me having a job, and I hope that it evolves. I like, there are for sure many loopholes. We cannot even open this in this forum, but like any regulation that came in this marine industry, as we see, it evolves. It's a living thing, and hopefully with the spirit, and it evolves. So that's what is my opinion.
Thank you, Varun. Jan?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I think a lot of people have reacted to the set of rules. Now, I wasn't in part of these conversations, but I think a very good way of thinking about it is kind of like turn the question around, right? Because then it gets a little clearer. So to recap your question here, why are we not measuring the lifting of cargo? Because it creates backwards effect. Well, let's say that we did. So what happens if we did? Well, then basically you'll start having a lot of problems if you are trading in a one-way trade. Let's say you are going from Europe, North America to New Zealand. It's very unlikely you'll have a cargo back. The freight rates will reflect that. But you will have a lot of steaming without any cargo, right? So in many ways, how would it have worked if you were actually measuring the cargo movement? Then it would have been more a measurement on how effective your tonnage planning is. So I think that all legislation it starts as a starting point, and then you get the amendments, right? And then the different lobbying group have managed to get in on this. So on the tanker side, for example, one thing that was going to absolutely kill you is that if you had a smaller tanker that's operating as a ship-to-ship feeder vessel, just going between a terminal and an offshore position where they would like their over the cargo, that would kill anybody's. So there are now in the correction factors that have come out, that has been included. Now, in certain other segments where you have really backwards effect, they have not been. So it comes down to really each of the segments interest groups to make sure that they were present and get this in. But one thing is for sure, if we're going to start having really backwards effects, which I actually foresee we might in some cases, then we'll probably see additions and amendments that sorts this out later. It's going to be a legislation that will take time to trim in.
Great. Thank you, Jan. Of course, I think there is already a planned revision in, when is it, 2025, right? So yeah, I guess there's more to come. Uwe?
You're asking me, you see me smiling already because of my background of the automotive industry. You can guess there used to be the old MVEG testing, and this was really laboratory environment. So the cars on the more or less artificial test had about 70% of their usual fuel consumption. I guess there's still a lot of, as you said, a lot of space for improvement, but also I would like to, I also think of Jan's point is it's true. If you run an empty vessel, you will also struggling. If maybe you have, for some reasons, you need to run it empty to reach some spot. That would be also needs to be considered. I think there is a need for optimization on this and refinement in this law. That is my opinion, and I hope it will take place soon.
Great, thank you. Nelson?
Well, from my perspective, the whole CII regulation, which is of course imposed on the ships that are operating and shipping companies that operate them, is subject to a large number of variables that are out of their hands. In that I mean as we've shown in multiple presentations today, and probably in many more that you find online, just-in-time arrival is a very, very, very big factor in making this happen. It's probably the strongest potential that you may possibly have. And as also in the questions, this is something that pops up immediately. People wonder, okay, so how are you going to make sure that this can actually happen? How are you going to make sure that you are going to be just in time and not still waste time? And to my opinion, having this CII regulation really play into something that ultimately works for everyone would require at least some form of integration with port terminals and have early access to information on what the arrival situation is, so that the planning can be done as such, in that speed optimization, as Varun and others have so clearly indicated, it can be a real thing. So in my opinion, that's where the whole CII story is still more than a little deficient. It's going to get us somewhere, but I don't think it's going to get us anywhere near as far as we could be had we had more accurate information on our just-in-time arrival optimization.
Thank you, Nelson. And finally, Christos?
Yeah, I'm somewhat covered by the other guys here. However, I would like to add the following. Let's talk as an owner. We have some measures, some things that we can do in order to enhance our CII. If we choose to do this instead, to load less in order to burn less, then where do we go in quotations? I mean, it's not that we will do it for a voyage, let's say, and then we will continue our business. We need to do it in every voyage. We need to do it all the time, and this maybe it's not so good for our future-proof our business. And I believe that we cannot do it in the long run. And if someone does it, will not be in the position to do it. In the long run. That's brings me to the fact that for this reason I have faith that won't be done by the majority, or at least by many. And the last standpoint is that even if this goes through and many vessels do this, then the refinement will be clear in the regulation, and something will change on this.
Great, thank you, Christos. Okay, and so I think this gives a good view. I think the key takeaway here is that everyone agrees that CII is finally, at the end of the day, not exactly perfect. But as with anything that is implemented on a global scale, and particularly things that are implemented to IMO, they are a result of compromise and continuous refinement, albeit slow. So it is important that regulation that is so ultimately simplistic in its interpretation has been implemented and so easy to communicate and has everyone centered on. So yeah, at the end of the day, we wait to see how its refinements are going to come in the years to follow. And so I have one more question here for the floor, and it's specifically to our service providers here. So not so much for you, Varun, but for everyone else. And so, as you saw in what I presented, ultimately, what we as Schulte Group developed for BSM together with Mariapps and now for third parties, of course, is a set of tools that were created based on the needs of non-operating owner and a ship manager. And this falls back to discussions that we had over 10 years ago, where we basically realized that nothing that was available at the market back then, okay, it's a decade ago, of course, would do. Basically, nothing was good enough for our purposes. So my question here is to each of you: what tools do you have that are not directed for operating owners and are instead directed for specifically for ship managers or owners on time charters? And I would like to start with Christos. You're muted, Christos. Still cannot hear you. I think you muted it from another control, not the one on this page. Okay, so I'll move to Nelson, and we can circle back to Christos.
Okay, so we haven't specifically developed tools that are directed at any specific group in particular. We are quite confident that the solution and the tools that we have at hand are widely applicable to all groups of stakeholders, all groups of participants in whoever needs to be taking care of reducing CII impact on their fleet. So therefore, I do believe that the entire suite that we currently have at our hands is applicable to all scenarios that we could possibly imagine. This is also, we've invested quite a lot of time into making sure that that is truly the case. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I mean, okay, this is ultimately from a user perspective, does this really work in practice? Because if you're giving a technical superintendent, for example, a tool that gives a simulation of how your CII is going to develop over the next year with controls over how the ship is going to trade, what speed's going to go out, and what have you. Ultimately, it's not something that he can use. And I mean, I think we here, as ship managers, represent a very large part of the community. And we ultimately want to see tools that directly help us do the job that our principals ultimately ask us to perform, whether it's owners or whether it's commercial operators.
I completely understand. And from that point of view, I would say that the suggested corrective measures, which I believe is what you're playing into, the suggested corrective measures, and we take that as a very broad perspective. We don't really, as I indicated in the beginning of the presentation, we don't really dive too much into detail as to what those specific parts are that you need to be taking care of. But at least we do categorize identified problems with the machine learning algorithm, and translate them into potential problematic areas into which technical superintendents, for example, could take action.
Okay.
And
great.
that's all
Thank you.
included. It's included in that same platform.
Perfect. Thank you. Christos, are you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Perfect. I don't know what happened. Unfortunately, I'm not the right person, to answer this exact question, because I'm more on the technical side of things in StormGeo. However, in a very general, sense that I have, we can use our all the tools can be used not exactly to managers or owners. We're not distinguished it that way. So it can be used by anyone. In any case, I should consult internally and revert if something is more, specific.
Okay. Thank you, Christos. Uwe?
Yes, I think I have to excuse because of my lack of experience coming to that question. I'm sorry. But you were asking for, is it correct, for tools, for tool environment for the owners and the ship operators. Was it correct?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately tools that as ship managers we can have in our hands to improve our environmental performance and ultimately our CII scores.
Yes. I would call these tools is more hardware related. We have our Sharpoli system, and for sure what I explained before, or what I introduced you before, is our scope of sensor world, and therefore we provide the interface, I would say the front end, so you can assess the data, not compared the way you do it to our colleagues here, the specialist for the data tools. So I'm not sure if I can go on this question. And
yeah, no, it's fair enough. I mean, yeah, you do come from a different perspective, and what we have, like from about Hoppe from the very beginning, is that you don't provide analytics. Therefore, we've ended up doing so much together with you guys. But thank you, Jan.
Yeah, so I totally get your question. We have a lot of internal conversations, and we actually treat the owners, as you said, specifically head owners that are TCing a vessel out. They have no interest in voyage optimization, for example. So there is some overlap. Our performance monitoring tools obviously are relevant for both. A head owner needs to know the hull and propeller condition so that they can plan for the cleaning. Additionally, they need to know what to be able to commit to on a charter party, and easily be able to do that and model that at different Douglas sea states and different before levels is relevant also for head owner. But there are also some areas where there's quite a bit of overlap. We have, for example, a generator optimization measurements that are out that basically gives a percentage of very easy KPI of how much time. How much percent of the time am my generators in optimal configuration? And we've seen, and that model we actually feed with the maintenance cost from the technical manager, and we spit out an inefficiency, the actual cost of that inefficiency, and a level that they can strive for. So those, I would say, are quite specifically relevant for head owners. But we also understand that a lot of the earnings and savings that we can create from AI will be the one who owns the big voyage calculation sheet, the freight. And if you pay for the voyage related cost and the fuel, and obviously the benefits are larger there. So what we do is that we know that not everything is relevant for the owners. We price lower for owners that don't operate their ships, because we need both the owners and the operators to create the collaboration. And finally, I would argue that our CII measurement is hardly relevant for the owners as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was just thinking before that, if you're the owner and ultimately the cargo owner, CII ultimately becomes completely irrelevant, right? Because CII will have a commercial implication if you're chartering out your ship. But if you're the cargo owner and the one paying for the fuel and the one operating the ship, ultimately, it's something that is not too important. But then again, not too many of those owners, right? So I think this brings basically the end of our discussion to an end. I don't have any more questions. Does anybody else from the floor have something else to raise, given that we have 5 minutes to our scheduled time left? No takers?
Not from me.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for attending. This was a very good session. It was very interesting to hear the perspectives from such a varied set of speakers. So thank you very much for your time, and yeah, we hope to see you again the next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.